I'm sorry for my lack of communication, no sleep. It's getting harder to keep things straight in my mind, and I'm so drained all the time. I've come to the conclusion that I may never get out of here. That's no longer important, though. Keeping you all away from here is one of the most essential things now. After so many sessions, which seem so long ago now, I found I could stay conscious during the whole treatment. Neither Mary nor the Tweedle twins stayed in that brightly lit, sterile, circular room after the blue liquid hit my veins, and I became far less inclined to thrash and fight against my restraints. I don't know then where they would go, but all three would return eventually, their thin, wasted faces ever so slightly flushed, and their gray-green, scaly skin covered with a faint sheen of sweat. Instead of looking almost desiccated when they came back into the room to disconnect me, the sweat made them look like they were rotting. Daily, I was dragged into the surgical room and strapped into the chair. The spirals of needles were inserted into my abused flesh, and the blue liquid would hit me. I craved that blue liquid like a heroin addict. I needed it to get me through my ordeals. Once Mary and the twins left, I had nothing to focus on. I still couldn't bear to look at foul sludge being slowly siphoned from me towards the tube. And I didn't want to consider the tools lining the workbenches. The only thing I could look at was her. For the longest time, I thought of her as a monster, a vile abomination so obviously begotten of Mary and one of the Tweedle twins, most likely dumb. Her withered form, even after she began to gain a more healthy color, terrified and disgusted me. But what else could I do but consider her as I was being emptied? Soon, I began to notice through the liquid she was suspended in that she had an almost insubstantial head of pale baby hair. Her nose had a slight upturn, a little like mine. Every so often, her tiny hands would flex. Whatever she was just a baby. I couldn't keep thinking of her as it, not when I began to notice these things. I spent some time while I watched her from my chair, thinking about what to call her. I had named my captors after twisted, nightmarish versions of fictional characters. Mary with her distorted, perverse Poppins voice and meth addict cheeriness. The Tweedle twins practically identical in every way, contributing to my nightmare while never saying a word. I wanted something different for this innocent. Ariel. I decided on a fairy tale I had loved when I was little. After all, this little one lived in a water world, just like the famous mermaid. In my head, when I watched her during the treatments, she was Ariel. I told her stories in my mind, filling her little world with talking fish, and wondered what would happen to her when I was no longer necessary. Once, when I summoned up the courage to ask Mary what would happen when I ran out of fat, she laughed for a solid 4 minutes. She asked me what I thought I had been eating for my meals. I told her I didn't know, because it didn't taste of much. It was just mush. She smiled and nodded and trilled at me. When fat gets processed, it doesn't really have much flavor left. I've never been so violently sick in all my life. I didn't eat for nearly 5 whole days. The trays of non-food were pushed through the gap in the door, and I couldn't even look at them. Knowing now that I had been eating processed fat all this time turned my stomach and revolted me to my core. Then, when the realization hit that it was my own fat, I know, I'm so slow. I decided I would starve before I ate anything ever again. But all too soon, I broke that vow. I was still having treatments daily, sometimes multiple times a day, and my stomach was burning with the pain of hunger. I couldn't help it. No matter how disgusting it was, I ate my non-food and tried to pretend I was somewhere else. It didn't help, but at least there was some respite from the pain. Of course, now I knew why the tubes were connected to Ariel's tube. Whatever processing was done to the fat stolen from me created something that fed and sustained Ariel. When I figured this out, I couldn't help but smile a little. One of the things that had attracted me to the BABY Corporation was the website's claim that my fat would be used by researchers for biofuel. I guess that wasn't too far off what was happening. Babies need fuel to develop and grow, don't they? Whatever fuel Ariel has been getting from my fat is having an effect, though. Recently, I began to realize that she's lost her skeletal look. I can barely see her ribs anymore. Her skin is still scaly, like that of her parents, but it looks less dry. When I watch her now, through the haze of pain and exhaustion, she almost looks like a regular baby. She doesn't seem so strange, so other as Mary and the twins. She doesn't feel evil either. When I look at her, she's just an infant. Mary, Dee, and Dumb all radiate evil. When they touch me, I am repulsed. Recent treatments followed their usual pattern. Dragged from my room down to the surgery, connected to my chair, and doped with that blue liquid left to be drained, while Mary and the Tweedles go wherever it is they go. Something has changed, though. Mary seems angrier, meaner. When she pushes the needle-tipped suction pads into my flesh, she twists them ever so slightly and grins when I whimper. She looks ill, too. I know that sounds odd considering her resemblance to a walking corpse. But now she's sweating before she leaves me in the room. I don't know how someone so painfully thin can be hot. I'm worried. Mary scares me when she's in her twisted, chirpy mood. What is she going to do if she gets sicker? I know, deep down, that I'm not getting out of here. But I think I'm going to have to do something to help Ariel. I don't think I have much longer, no sleep. I can feel my time slipping away like the proverbial sand through my fingers. All I can do now is try my hardest to save Ariel, keep others from falling into this awful trap, and put an end to the horrors that are unfolding as I write. I know now what's wrong with Mary. I know what she and the Tweedles have been doing while I've been hooked into that fucking chair, my body being drained and my imagination populating water worlds for the tiny being fed by my fat. I know why they'll never, ever let me go. Mary is pregnant. When she and the Tweedle twins have come back sweaty and flushed, it's because they've been rutting in some room somewhere in this foul building to make another baby like Ariel for me to sustain. And it's worked. That's why Mary has been so vicious and sick-looking lately. She's pregnant, and it's taking its toll on her wasted frame. Soon enough, there will be another baby in the tank, needing the biofuel that comes from processing the rancid mush extracted from me. But what happens when I'm not enough? What happens if I get sick or hurt or run out, in spite of that vile non-food I'm eating. Mary and the twins will lure another poor sucker here, and this will all begin again. I can't let that happen. I have to get Ariel out of here and burn this place to the ground. Today's treatment was painful. I don't know how far along Mary is. Her bump is tiny on her withered corpse-like frame, but pregnancy makes her vindictive. After the twins strapped me in, Mary turned to look at me, her mouth set like a Halloween pumpkin. "How are we feeling today?" she chirped at me, her voice its usual putrescent syrup. "You're looking a little pale, dear," came the false concern. I began to squirm in the chair. What was she going to do now? "Maybe it's the anesthetic," she said as if to herself. She lifted a gaunt hand to wipe the beads of sweat from her corpse-like face and click her tongue a couple of times, as if she were thinking. "No anesthetic for you today, precious. I rather think it's making you unwell." No anesthetic. That meant no blue stuff. No calming, pain-muffling potion to get me through the treatment. I began to panic and fight harder than ever against the straps securing me to the chair. Being drained hurt enough with the blue liquid. It was going to be hell without it. The Tweedles gripped my shoulders and pinned me back into my chair, while Mary covered my abdomen and thighs with the spiral needled suction pads. This time she was sadistic. Instead of just putting them in, she would start to press the needles into my flesh and then warble in that hated voice that she had changed her mind. Slowly, so slowly, she would pull the pads from my tortured skin, now a permanent bruise from my knees to my collarbone, and push them into a different place. After a while, I stopped screaming, and the tears came with gulping breaths. It felt like forever, but eventually she seemed to have gotten whatever it was she wanted from her twisted game, and, eyes wild with triumph in their sunken sockets, she flapped at the twins to let me slump down into myself. She rested her hands on her protruding hips and spoke to me. "Soon," she crooned. I silently swore a vow that if I ever make it out of this, I would rip out her vocal cords. "Soon, you're going to have another perfect little one to help. Won't that be lovely?" I looked at her through the tears and just sniffed. "Come on, don't be sad. Isn't this better than your old life? We promised you you'd be a better you, and you are. You're helping my precious ones to live." A look of pain flashed across her face. That curious deepness returned to her voice as she muttered just loud enough for me to hear the final few words. "Help the others." What others? Were there other people like me here? Before I could gather myself enough to ask her, she seemed to shake herself, and that despicable smile stretched the dry, scaly skin across her skull once more. Without another word, she turned her back to me, hit the console button that would begin the process, and stalked from the room with the Tweedles in tow. If I had thought that the treatments hurt before, I had clearly had no idea. Have you ever bent back a fingernail and felt that sickening, agonizing pain as your nail pulls from the flesh? Internalize that pain and multiply it until you feel as though you're standing on the knife edge of consciousness. That's how the treatments feel with the blue liquid. I fought to stay present for as long as I could. In crazed desperation, I spoke Ariel's name aloud, the only time I have ever done this. I called out for the only comfort I could see. Ridiculous, I know, It was useless. The blackness, tinged with the crimson of shrieking pain, was closing in. For the first time, I looked at the tools on the workbenches running around the circular walls. The sharp, strong tools. As my eyes began to roll back in my head, the spark of an idea flared. I don't know how long I was unconscious for. With no windows in my room, I have no real sense of time. For all I know, it's 8 in the morning and people are driving to work as I write this. When I woke up, a tray of non-food next to me, I could barely move. Blood is still streaked across my skin in tiger stripes from the needle marks, bubbling as I pulled myself upright. When I managed to sit myself up and the spots stopped dancing across my vision, I tipped my head back and let my mind wander. The tools, they are the answer. There had been so many, and I don't care to know why. But there had been some incredibly evil-looking things on those benches. If I can get my hands on even one of those, maybe I can do something. But what? The Tweedles may look like Superman after a week-long kryptonite enema, but they are strong. So much stronger than I will ever be. And Mary? I don't know how strong she is. She looks like I should be able to snap her like a twig. But I'm not sure. Besides, she's pregnant. Can I really put her down, knowing that she's carrying another baby? And what about Ariel? How am I going to save her? If, by some miracle, I can get free long enough to get her out of the tube, should I? What if being in that tube, fed by my processed blubber, is the only way to keep her alive? I don't know what to do, no sleep. I don't know how I'm going to get out of here, or how I'm going to save Ariel, or how I'm going to stop the evil bastards keeping me here. I've never been a strong person. I've never fought for anything in my life. And now I have to fight for my life and Ariel's. I'm so scared. I'm so very fucking scared. But I don't have a choice.